Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. James DePelisi here with the Broward County Crime Commission. It's my proud pleasure to have Sheriff Mike Chitwood from Volusia County, one of the premier and great sheriffs we have in the entire United States, in my opinion. They're doing some great work in Volusia County, and he's going to be a part of a special panel that we're going to be having on Wednesday, December 1st, in approximately 1 week, that will discuss why children would even attempt to shoot up police officers. That's happening around the country, but he had an incident, or his office had an incident in June of this year that I'm going to let him tell you about it in his own words, in terms of how his deputies really did a great job in doing as much as they could to de-escalate the situation, which we're large proponents of de-escalation. As you know, Sheriff Chitwood in the past has participated with the Crime Commission in a couple of webinars where we discussed de-escalation. He's one of the foremost experts in that area. So without any further ado, welcome to the program, Sheriff Chitwood.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Great. So you've been so renowned in basically being a community sheriff. I think if someone had to identify you statewide as a sheriff, it's really how you really do the most that you can to promote your agency, to promote yourself in the community. And obviously, we have different incidents that take place, but in your own words, what primarily happened back in June of this year in the summer when those kids basically left the foster home that they were in? Did they escape, or they basically broke out of there? What exactly happened, and what ensued from there?
Yeah, real quick. What we have is it's really it's called the Friends of United Methodist Church, and it's a home that's really for kids that have some type of sexual abuse in their background. May have drug abuse issues, may have some kind of issues. It's really not meant to house kids that have severe mental and behavioral issues. So it's not you're not confined there. It's kind of like a college campus. You can come and go. And that's basically what happened. Is these two young folks were placed there, and they decided to just walk off campus. And when they did that, they were doing what kids do. They decided that it would be kind of cool to break into a house, and they broke into a home. The homeowner had just left. He had just left with his daughters to go food shopping, and they break in, and there's a bunch of guns in the house. There's an AR-15 in there. There's a shotgun. There's a handgun. There's several hundred rounds of ammunition. Deputies are alerted to this. There's a biking trail that runs behind the home. They hear a bunch of glass breaking. They call 911. We get there, and by the grace of God, the deputies, for some reason, decide not to enter the house. They set up a perimeter and try to establish communication with who's ever in there. And at that point in time, the homeowner returns and tells us, "Hey, just so you know, I have an AR-15 in there, I have a handgun in there, I have a shotgun in there, and I have several hundred rounds of ammunition." And as they tried to make contact with the juveniles for probably 45 minutes to an hour, maybe even longer than an hour, they were met with gunfire from the 14-year-old and the 12-year-old. There was a point in time that one of the deputies that had eyes on was telling the deputies in the front of the house, "Do not try to enter," because they're lying in wait behind a doorway. He could see where they were actually waiting for somebody to come in so they could open fire on them. After numerous announcements, attempts to make contact with them, we start to see a bunch of movement in the garage, and the young lady levels the shotgun at deputies and advances toward them. And then they open fire and strike her multiple times. The little boy, like I say, little boy's 12. He had the AR-15. He drops it and runs back into the house. Eventually, we're able to get up on her. I would tell you, I think the deputy saved her life. They did first aid immediately on her. and were able to carry her out a quarter of a mile down the road to where the ambulance was. And I couldn't be more prouder of them. But, you know, when we discovered the background of these kids, you know, the little boy, his foster mother, one of his foster mothers called me and said, this kid is going to be a serial killer. This kid, she's been in the foster system forever, a foster mom forever. She said she has never seen a kid with such mental and behavioral issues as this 12-year-old is. And the 14-year-old who we arrested and she was charged as an adult, she's been Baker acted at least 10 times in her 14 years.
Wow. And
she has some horrific mental health issues. You know, I mean, she was you know, her mom was a prostitute and an intravenous drug abuser her whole life. And one of the things she told us was she thought this was like Grand Theft Auto. Let's roll like this is Grand Theft Auto, is what she tells her co-conspirator in this. And they thought it was a game to shoot it out with the cops.
You know, it's so interesting that Grand Theft Auto constantly keeps coming back in all these situations. And we actually did a behavioral health panel on that about 2 years ago. We've actually done 2 panels about how video games and Grand Theft Auto in particular has such an impact on these kids. Now there's the ability for them to go into the game and become avatars and actually even design what they want to do within Grand Theft Auto. And for parents that might be listening to this, you really, really need to take a close look and a sound ear if your children are involved with that game. Yeah, there may be some people that don't think anything of it. Maybe it doesn't change their personality one way or the other. But we have data that shows that it can have a significant impact on certain people, just like any other type of drug or addiction or what have you. And the thing about it is you see these kids spending countless hours and sometimes days at a time just immersed in this video game. And I actually was called to the Pembroke Pines Police Department one time where they had a whole full day seminar on basically the effects of Grand Theft Auto. And as an adult, I couldn't even sit through it with some of the footage this narrator or this seminar professional was discussing with law enforcement and people like myself. And what's your opinion about that game, that video game, Sheriff Chitwood, and the impact it's having on our younger generation?
I'll tell you, Jim, what astounded me was the ability to handle firearms that I attribute to that game. The fact that they were able to load a banana clip and then load the AR, you
right.
know, the pump shotgun, to load. I mean, to do all those things as a teenager. I thought to myself, when I was 12, I didn't know the first thing about a gun.
Right.
And the fact that, you know, let's roll like this is Grand Theft Auto, completely divorced from reality. You know, one of the other things that came out of this investigation was there's another video game. It's not like Grand Theft Auto, but you could go online and play it, and you rack up points for killing your classmates. It's a school shooting video where you try to kill as many students as you can. And, you know, like I said, I couldn't agree with what you just said more, that, you know, not every kid that plays Grand Theft Auto is going to end up to want to shoot out with the cops, but you have kids that have some issues here. And this is the way they solve their problems. They think this is pretty cool. One of the things that they did to the poor homeowner's house, he had been given an award, a life-saving award from the Seminole County Sheriff's Office, and it was hanging up in his den. They trashed his house. They thought this guy was a cop. That even took it a step further of how disrespectful they were at wanting to hurt law enforcement. That they assumed this guy was a deputy because of that award and the firearms in the house. They just trashed. They cost probably tens of thousands, if not over $100,000 worth of damage to this poor man's home.
Interesting. You know, our main modus operandi with the Crime Commission is to understand and analyze cases and situations like this, so things like this can be preempted and prevented for the future. And what can you leave us with in terms of what can be learned from this so these types of things don't happen in the future? And I know that's a broad question in light of everything that happened, but I mean, if you had to sum things up, what could you tell us to how to prevent and preempt situations like this for the future where kids have this mindset to want to do things like this?
I think, well, I'll just stick with our case here with these two young folks. You know, they had been in the system. They had been in the DJJ system. They had been in with DCF. And the system is woefully inadequate to provide the mental help that these kids need. These kids need intense mental health and intense supervision. And it's just not there. You know, that's why those kids got dumped into FUMPS, because there was nowhere else to put them. So they put them in a low risk facility. And sadly, you know, this isn't going to get any better because these two kids aren't alone. You know, there's another kid that killed a security guard in FUMPS in June as well. One punch and he killed the guy. And that kid is 15. He's declared incorrigible, incompetent to stand trial. And he's extremely, extremely violent. And the system can't handle these kids. That's what needs to be looked at.
Interesting. Well, that might be a whole nother panel of discussion to have for the future. We'll certainly try to address it next week. Thank you for your time. I know you're so busy, as we all are, but I think it's important to get messages out like this for family members and parents to understand. And I really appreciate you coming on with us today.
Jim, I want to wish you and everybody listening a happy Thanksgiving as well.
Yeah, you too, Sheriff. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we'll speak to you on December 1st. Look forward to it. Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.